Hi, welcome to the Clothier Roundtable. I'm Mindy Martell and I'm the owner of Clothier Design Source. And today I have with me...
Hello, I'm Danielle Heiser, the design director here at Clothier Design Source.
And today we're going to be talking about, what kind of brands succeed making in the U.S. and what does it mean to be a sustainable fashion brand or clothing brand, and also just about the subject of slow fashion and what that means to us and how we think it applies to making in the U.S. One of the questions we wanted to talk about is, who do you see succeeding making clothes in the U.S.? Like, what kinds of brands?
Yeah, well, I'd say the very first thing I think everyone thinks of is made in the U.S. is you can get a higher quality all around for the garment itself, and you also have to have a higher price point. So something that has a product that has longevity, so that people can invest in that item. I'd say that longevity and or a level of complexity that is difficult to communicate with overseas factories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just thinking of examples of products, or what you mean by longevity.
Mm-hmm.
So, the clothing industry is known for having really quick cycles, having a fall, spring, summer, winter line that, where new product is getting dropped every season. And that's more of a fast fashion kind of concept. The slow fashion concept of products that have longevity really works being made in the U.S. And so what that means is, you develop a product that's going to be appealing over several months, several seasons, and maybe even several years, without having to refresh it because of trends changing. And the reason is labor in the U.S. is more money, right? So in order, to do your development in the U.S. costs more money. And so you want to get more bang for your buck. So you want your product to kind of last longer, have a longer life cycle in the marketplace. And so that's what we mean by longevity. And we think that works really well for making in the U.S. Do you have any examples of products? Just like categories maybe, or?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I always think about of course, heritage brands. I mean, I think that's a really big go-to for people. Specifically a brand that I follow quite often is Filson, and they make the same, this is kind of an extreme example, but they make the same vest today that they made 100 years ago. And I think that's pretty cool that they've been able to appeal to a segment in the market that's specialized and really wants investment pieces. I mean, think about that same jacket, not only through one person's life cycle, but through the generations, and how the key, I think, to their success is really appealing to a certain market segment. That what is important to that segment is functionality, as well as style and things lasting a long time. But their number one thing isn't new trends. And I think that you can apply that same philosophy to different styles as well. To any sort of segment that's maybe left out of the normal mass retailer section. Yeah,
I think you really hit on a topic that I think is part of longevity, which is functional. There's something about that Filson vest that it's a beautiful piece, it's comfortable, yet it's functional, and that's how it's lasted over 100 years. It's it's wool, it keeps your core warm. It's one of the most useful outdoor pieces you can get, right?
Yeah.
So it's not only is it beautiful and can be fashionable because it's that has this nice heritage, nostalgic look to it, but it's functional, and so I think that's also one of the keys of being sustainable and being able to afford to make in the U.S. is, how is your piece going to last over the years, over the decades, and even over the generations? But anything over 1 or 2 years is a huge plus. It's a change from the norm in the marketplace. You know, many items right now are only designed to last 3 months. So that kind of brings us to the topic of slow fashion and just, you know, what is slow fashion? And, you know, what does that mean to you, I guess?
Yeah, so it makes me think of, well, I kind of wanted to talk about, like, so we're talking about sustainability and what does that mean in terms of fashion, and I think oftentimes what comes to people's mind is this, like, eco-friendly, tree hugger, brown and green, you know, fabrics, you know, hemp or whatever, and that, yes, that is like a small part of it, but I think what by reclaiming it as this slow fashion movement is that these long-term garments can be stylish and fashionable, and that there was a lot more care and thoughtfulness and put into each step of the way when the product was being developed and then also manufactured. So to me, it's using those principles of the eco-friendly fabrics, but making a garment actually fashionable and appealing to lots of different people.
Yeah, and, you know, slow fashion, you know, to me is just literally slowing down the cycle. You know, slowing down the cycle at which you're producing new types of garments. It's slowing down your buying cycle too. You know, you might feel like you need to refresh your wardrobe every 3 months, kind of thing, but it's kind of just learning how to, like, slow down that whole cycle and buy pieces that are more staple, can cross over into different seasons, you know, cross over into different functionalities, different activities, that kind of thing. And just realizing that, you know, you don't need 100 t-shirts in your closet. You could actually get by with 10 very well-made t-shirts that are going to last a long time. And just kind of changing your thinking into how do we become, you know, more sustainable by, you know, to your point, I want to get to more about the fibers and everything, but even ignoring the fibers for now, right? So not even thinking about sustainable fibers yet. Even if you buy all polyester, can you slow it down? Can you slow down the cycle, right? Of how many pieces you're buying a year and what quality, you know, what quality you're buying so it can last longer. So one thing to think about is, you know, in order to understand slow fashion, I think we should talk about fast fashion for a minute. Very, very simply put, it's the amount of waste, right? So back to the 50 to 100 t-shirts in your closet, you know, a lot of those t-shirts are really made to last wearing maybe 3 or 4 times, and it's got a fun new poppy color on it or a new print or something like that, but it's made very cheaply. It's made to only last, you know, 5 to 10 washes. It's going to fall apart. It's going to get holes. It's going to quickly go out of fashion or out of trend, and so you throw it away or you donate it to the Goodwill, who in turn has way too many clothes donated to them, and they're actually baling clothes and, you know, throwing them into landfills because they get so many donations. So, you know, why is fast fashion bad? It's just too much. Too much clothes are being made right now.
Yes.
Where people don't. There's not enough people in the world to possibly need that many clothes. There's literally too much. That it's getting baled and going on barges, and it's going to these third world countries who they're like, stop, we have too much.
Yes.
We have too much of your junk. Please stop sending us your junk. It's insane.
Yeah, it is insane. And I think a really shocking figure is that the garment industry as a whole is considered to be the second largest polluter behind the oil industry. Like, isn't that insane? Like, people think, you know, it's like, they're just clothes, you know, they're made of fibers and they're not bad. You know, everyone needs to wear clothes, which is true, but like the level of waste is really affecting like the planet from an environmental perspective as well. And it's mind-boggling how much waste there really is.
Yeah, and so how did we get here, right? I mean, how does this happen? It happens because it's so cheap to make clothes overseas. That's how it happens. It's insanely cheap. We were just talking this morning how, say, a shipment of clothes comes over, you know, from somewhere, say Pakistan, and the whole shipment is defective because maybe the zippers were defective that got sewn into the garment. It is way cheaper for that company to just dump that whole cargo shipment into a landfill than to repair the zippers, because that's just how cheap it is to make garments overseas. And how is it? I mean, how is it that it's that cheap? Right.
I mean, exactly. So there's some really interesting figures out there about that too, where that I've seen, you know, where they'll compare like the material cost, you know, the actual fabric and the buttons and the zippers, and then they'll compare that to other countries. You know, how does the material cost between making in the U.S. and making in Pakistan? They're pretty much the same. So the material is actually, that's not what's cheaper, that's actually the same. Where you really get the cheapness is with the labor. And so, you know, yes, in America we have a really high standard of living, and we want to pay people, you know, we have laws about minimum wage and laws against child labor, so that immediately, you know, protects you from having to deal with that when you make in the U.S. And then, in other countries, Pakistan's a great example, there's no laws regarding labor. And it's not only that, yes, you know, cost of living is less in Pakistan so people can make less, but that's not nearly what the problem is. The problem is it's slave labor. It's really, actually, they're using slaves and people are dying because they're not making enough money to buy food.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess technically they pay them, but it's kind of like the old, you know, coal mine, or I don't know. It's like the old where the company store, or how's that song go? I owe my soul to the company store.
Yep,
it's
exactly.
The old model of get the worker in, you know, pay them a pittance, you know, pay them 50 cents a day, let's say, to sew, and then charge them room and board to stay at your factory, and then charge them to eat the food that you're going to serve them at your factory, and then that worker ends up with $0 or negative, because they still are paying for the room and board and the food at the factory. And that's how they get away with saying it's not slave labor, because they actually are paying them, but then they're charging back all these expenses to them.
Yeah.
So really, in the end, it is slave labor. And that's how you get a $9.99 t-shirt.
Yep. That's going to be in the garbage in 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like these huge human rights abuses to make garbage. That's the truth.
It is the truth. And we used to make overseas for several years. The first few years we existed, and I would travel over to overseas factories, and the last time I was there, gosh, it must have been eight or 9 years ago now, something like that, probably 8 years ago. I was in a factory, you know, just, it's everything you read about, but until you see it firsthand, it's so easy to go buy that $9.99 t-shirt, right? Because it's just so convenient, and you can remove yourself. It's so easy to like just remove yourself from the suffering of the others that got you that t-shirt. Even though you kind of heard it in the back of your mind and you knew it, but it's just so normal. It's so normal for us.
Yeah, it is.
And having seen it so many times firsthand, I can tell you it's just very impactful. And you know, I really wish every person could just walk through a factory, even for a couple hours of their life, and I'm pretty sure the entire world would change. But it's just easy. It's easy to remove yourself from it. But anyway, less grim, less doom and gloom. We make in the U.S. here. We have a factory here.
Yes.
You know, and that's why we're talking about longevity of products and sustainability and things like that, and slow fashion, because that's one way brands survive making in the U.S.
Yes.